Anthony, it's so great to see you. I'm in the land of deep dish pizza and great steaks.
And the largest rooftop bar in the world.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in just 1 minute.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the one and only No Vacancy Live. Of course, that's Anthony Melchiori. I'm Glenn Houseman, and I'm coming at you live from the Sable Navy Pier Hotel in Chicago. Anthony, you're going to be joining me here and tomorrow in Chicago for the Hospitality Asset Management event that we're going to be keynoting at. So I beat you.
Yeah, I will. And you know what? I'm going to try deep dish pizza because I tried it like 20 years ago, and I always say bad things about it. So I'm going to give it one more try.
Well, I am going to do that as well because I've become now friendly with the CEO of Pizzeria Uno's, and he suggested that I go over there, and he's going to be coming on our show soon, Anthony. So
how'd you get to know that guy?
He reached out to us. His team reached out to us, and they said they wanted to come on, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, fantastic. Let's go over there when I get there.
Yeah, we could totally do that. All right, before we get started today, we got a great guest. We got Bob Habeeb of Maverick Hotels and Restaurants on today. They are the operators of this particular property I'm at right now. But before we get to that, I want to encourage each and every one of you, if you're looking to make a great investment, why not take a look at the family of Radisson products, now part of the Choice Hotels family. Of course, I'm talking Radisson Blue, I'm talking Radisson Red, I'm talking Country Inn and Suites. 3 great brands ready to be propelled forward by the amazing franchising machine at Choice Hotels. You can still go to RadissonHotelsAmerica.com/en-us/development, or just check out the Choice Hotels development page. All right. How are you, Anthony?
It took me 35 years in this business to realize the importance of the machine of franchising.
Right.
It really literally took me, because I didn't understand it. Now I understand it, my friend.
Yep.
So Chicago, man, is it windy?
Yes. And as I've been reminded every time I mention that, they're like, well, it is called the Windy City. And the person who can once again explain Windy City is to us, I got with us Bob Habeeb of Maverick Hotels and Restaurants. Bob, so great to see you, man.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Wow, you're like magic. I like what you did with the cameras there.
Hey, listen, we're always consistently trying to upgrade what we're doing over here. Now we can do multiple camera angles when it feels like it.
And talk about the Navy. We're going to be going to the Pentagon maybe in a month or so. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, this is really awesome. So Bob, he was in the Air Force, right? And he's been doing some great speeches for them, helping to motivate their young people there. He was even put in the Hall of Fame for the Air Force, and now it looks like he's going to wrangle us the woman who runs the entire Air Force, and we're going to go interview her at the Pentagon. How cool!
Well, she's the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. She's the highest enlisted advisor in the United States Air Force. Yeah. And I'm I'm like a little kid. When we had coffee with her when I did the speech, I was like a 3-year-old. But so I'm excited about that.
That's pretty cool.
I have a question for you. It's a very easy question. It's not open-ended in any way. What's new?
Gosh, pick a topic.
All right, so let's start with I think the best place to start. And Anthony, I want to talk to him about the current investment cycle that's going on right now. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about this cool property that's over here and what that's like. I mean, this is a real rare space. It's something that can't be ever recreated. How did you guys get involved in this particular project, and what was it like?
So Navy Pier has been the iconic front porch of Chicago since it was built in 1916. Wow. And the Navy Pier board of directors put out an RFP for someone to develop a hotel on the east side.
Right.
We won that RFP, and it's been a labor of love for almost 7 years to get the hotel done, open, built. We're building on water. We have pandemic and social unrest sprinkled into the middle of our building process, but when the hotel was finally completed, it's amazing views. It's a beautiful place to be, and it's irreplaceable real estate.
Yeah, it's amazing how our memories are so short that people forget about the unrest and the pandemic and what everybody's been through. I already see people forgetting completely of kind of what everybody's been challenged with the last couple of years. So it's great to see that you opened that hotel. How many rooms is it?
223.
Okay, just big enough to give you a headache, but just small enough to be manageable.
Absolutely true. Very true.
That's hysterical. But the cool thing is they have like a convention center here, right? I
There is.
believe I believe I attended an AHOA annual conference here 6, 7, 8 years ago, which is probably 10 years ago in old man time. But that must be really great to be strategically located and not just a great place that tourists are coming to, but you have events.
Yeah, everybody knows Navy Pier for the summer vacation season, and,
Right.
and that's certainly the busiest time of the year for us. But in addition to that, we're affiliated with the Curio Collection, so we've got the big Hilton engine behind us, and Navy Pier is the largest free span space after McCormick Place in the city of Chicago. So we really have 12 months of business here, much more than most people would.
Right. And just for those people that don't know Curio, why don't you just somebody explain that?
Curio is a soft brand. It's a collection of independent styled hotels that are affiliated with Hilton. And it's the best of both worlds because the hotel has a personality. You design it to be in some way thematic, and yet you have the big engine of Hilton behind you. So when you take it to market, unlike a typical independent hotel where you're street fighting every day for your business, you've got the benefit of the brand behind you.
Yeah, and I think in 20 years, those brands are going to be bigger than the parent brand in some instances, because owners and operators really kind of, you're putting all this money and you're putting, your livelihood and your reputation on it. You want control of it. So since the soft brands came out, where was it, like 15 years ago?
That was the Ascend collection. I think it was like 2009-ish. Don't quote me on that, but something like that. Yeah.
It was the District was one of the first soft brands right next to Staybridge Suites in Times Square. They opened it up exactly the same time we opened up Staybridge, I think the same day. And so I found that very interesting because I didn't understand the whole soft brand concept. But now I think it's going to be, in 15, 20 years, I think it's going to be keeping the big brands in business. I think they're going to save themselves by doing that.
I think you're right. If you look at the development pipeline for Hilton and Marriott or any of the big brands, so much of it is in the soft branded product. And it's a turnabout. The genius of Holiday Inn in the late 50s was making everything the same, and that's what consumers wanted. And now the genius of these soft brands is making everything different, which is what consumers want.
But has that same level of dependability. And I think that it's kind of the same in that sense, but instead of having the same bedspreads or the same, the same kind of design, it has the same sort of quality guarantee, right?
Agreed. Yeah, the brands maintain strict standards and consumers trust that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So obviously your company's Maverick Hotels and Restaurants. I had the chance to eat at Lyrica last night, and I really saw the uniting of the food and the beverage with the overall concepting of the hotel. You started off, Anthony, interestingly enough, he worked for Rent Group back in the day, and at the time they owned a Hard Rock, and you kind of got exposed to that whole world. So the reason why I bring that up is because hoteliers are notoriously not restaurateurs. So I have a feeling you felt a little bit more confident to even put that name restaurants in your
well, with all due respect, before you answer that, he wasn't a restaurateur. He sold T-shirts because they made more money in T-shirts than they did in restaurants.
We used to call it a T-shirt shop where you can get lunch. But,
Is it true that you guys made more money, more net profit from T-shirts than you did from the restaurants?
Indeed, yes. Wow. Back in the day. I don't know how it is today, but back in the day, that's the case.
Well, yeah, you probably haven't worked there in decades.
No.
Yeah.
Not one person I know doesn't have a Hard Rock T-shirt somewhere in their closet.
Yeah, I don't, believe it or not.
You don't? But you've owned one at some point.
I've never ever had a Hard Rock T-shirt. Isn't that the strangest thing?
Then you are a Martian. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, well, I didn't have any room in my collection after my, my fish T-shirts and stuff like that. So,
no, my friend, oh my God, his name, I haven't spoken to him in many years, but it'll come to me. Scott Cronin. Do you know Scott Cronin?
I don't.
The chef, Scott Cronin?
He was a manager. He ran that for a little while, I believe, and he told me that about the T-shirts.
That's really interesting. Bob is commenting on soft brands. Dependability. I don't have time to research independent hotels, but I can depend on the projections of a soft brand's parent company to have vetted that property. I like that idea. And that's one of the things that kept me from staying at independent hotels for a long time is I'm just trained to go to the brand.com, but also it's hard to find them and make those decisions if you already have that brand.com type of a mindset.
Yeah. But I don't think I let Bob answer his question. So whatever question you
We
answer,
didn't, but I should say Dr. Producer Suzanne has one correction. Ascend opened in 2008, not 2009. But good for me. I was close. Bob, what was it asking? Maybe tee off the question again about the restaurants.
no, you asked it. I don't
Yeah, I
remember.
did.
You're old.
I
You're old.
asked
You
was,
don't remember.
I was mentioning the restaurant downstairs, and it's got a Latin Spanish kind of feel to it. How do you come up with that particular concept in the context of how it fits into what you're trying to achieve in this particular property, and will actually be a real profit center instead of a loss leader?
Yeah, in the case of Lyrica,
Mhm.
the restaurant business isn't all that different than the hotel business
Right.
because you're searching for the white space.
Mhm.
You don't want to do what everyone else has done, so you try and find a concept that addresses some itch that needs to be scratched.
Right.
And for us, Lyrica was the thought because Latin food is just so light and whimsical, if you will, and it allows us the creative license to do
Right.
some fun, light things. And it was a good fit for the hotel, even though it's really, in the sense of being Latin, the hotel is not intended to be Latin.
No, it is. The hotel is not Latin, but it was nice having that kind of feel because I think Americans in particular have gotten accustomed to Mexican, Latin's cousin, and I think it's a good bridge to be able to try some of those different things. You could cross over with like a beef empanadas, but then get more into like the Serrano ham and that type of stuff. That's more Basque, right?
Absolutely, it's more Portugal and Spain than Mexican, which is what a lot of people associate with Latin food.
Yeah, it's funny. Did you have to train your audience here, or do they come with some sort of understanding?
Our culinary team has a deep-rooted Latin experience. The service team, everyone needed to be educated on what makes this dish authentic and why is it different and special.
Yeah, Anthony.
No, I'm actually curious of how you started the company. How the company started.
Yeah, I had been with a management company for 20 years that was very successful, still is. And in 2018, I thought it was time to open my own shop and take a different approach to the industry. Felt like we were at an inflection point. Did I know then that we were about
right.
to inflect more than I expected?
Yeah, an inflection point is more like it.
But the idea of Maverick is that we're very versatile, highly creative, prescriptive in nature rather than systems or forms oriented. We're our portfolio ranges from little oceanfront resorts in New England to major urban hotel like this one. We own 2 resorts, a select service. It's a real mix of hotel product, and our nature, right? Our deconstructed nature allows us to be a good fit for all those hotels.
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to talk a little bit about how you started the company. What was that process like? Because all of us at some point feel inspired to maybe we want to go out on our own, but we don't necessarily understand how to go about and do it. For me, I spent a full year preparing and organizing and getting set in order to do that. What was that process like for you from when you woke up and you realized you had no choice but to start a company?
Yeah, the urge, once you decide that it's time to take that dive and it's a risk because when you're very accustomed to having a very nice paycheck for a very long period of time, and the next day, if you're going to eat, you're going to fish. Yeah. It does give you a little bit of anxiety. And then in my own journey, we got the company started and with a lot of early success, thankfully, good, the benefit of being around this industry a long period of time and developing a reputation. And then the pandemic hit. And honestly, you bite your fingers through the pandemic saying, was this such a good idea?
Of course.
Are we going to survive? And we did survive. We actually did fairly well through the pandemic. And then I think I'm experiencing what everyone in the industry has experienced. The first of the year, as soon as we really got the worst of that Omicron behind us, boom, it's been amazing. We've added 6, it'll be 8 properties the end of this month, this year.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
And is that because the smaller management companies or less successful management companies lost those properties because they went out of business?
I honestly think it's more a shift from the bigger management companies. I think that there's been a greater value placed on flexibility and being nimble. And while there are a lot of advantages to the mega management companies that are in the marketplace today, there are a lot of other people that prefer to be with a small, entrepreneurially driven company where they have access to the senior management, and the labor market's exacerbated that. The big companies are out in the marketplace every day trying to find capable leadership to manage their portfolios, and a smaller company has a more contained universe of that.
So, it's interesting that you would make that switch, because one of the things that prevented me from making the switch into having a management company as opposed to a consulting company is the margins. I mean, you really need X amount of hotels to really do well, because people think you have a management company, or you're managing this hotel, you're making a fortune. It's like a McDonald's. You open up one McDonald's, you really need 7 to make any money. And that's kind of what always scared me.
Well, what's shifted in the last couple of years that helps that is outsourcing. Management companies were always slow to outsource back in the day. And we, for example, outsource our accounting. We have the ability to scale. We outsource our payroll functions. We're part of a PEO. And it gives us a nimble approach where when we pick up hotels, we pick up the phone and have someone else dispatch folks to help us get the employees signed up and so on.
With housekeeping and things like that, right?
Yeah, we still internally manage housekeeping, but there are a lot of folks that are outsourcing housekeeping.
Yeah, New York City's outsourced, which really shocks me. And I just opened a little hotel for a client, and we outsource housekeeping, and it seems to be the trend. And if somebody's looking to open up a housekeeping outsourcing in Florida, I think in the next 10 years, they're going to be very, very, very successful.
Well, this labor market that we're in is going to change the way that we manage in multiple ways. I mean, I do think that the labor stress that we're seeing starts to mitigate a little bit as the economy softens. But but the problem is here to stay, and we're all going to have to develop a strategy to deal with it.
Yeah. And right now, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but is making this industry exciting. And, you have zero barrier to entry. You just have to have the heart, and you have to show up on time. You have to care, and you can be, a CEO of a management company in 10 years. I was just talking to, matter of fact, as soon as this is over, I'm speaking to a young lady who's a junior in college. And she wants me to help her with a paper, and she's going to videotape me. And I do it a lot. I'm sure you do it a lot. And I said, "What's your goal?" And she goes, "Well, in 10 years, I want to work at the Bellagio in Vegas." I was like, "Would you like an internship at the Bellagio this summer?" And she's like, "What?" For you, and maybe we can get you an internship. I can definitely get you an internship in Vegas. I'm not sure at the Bellagio exactly. And she's like, "What?" I was like, "I can get that?" I was like, "Of course you can get that." It's like, so just making this so approachable for people is really, really important to, I think, what you do, what I do, what Glenn does. And it's a real approachable business, but you have to work really, really hard. I just came off 4 days of working 18-hour days, open up this little hotel. And I told Glenn, I haven't had more fun in 20 years. And that includes all my TV shows and my speaking engagements and everything else I do in my business. The last
being on the mic with me. That's for when you're on the mic.
Definitely more fun than you. Absolutely. And I got my first comment card in guest because I helped him guest with the luggage.
Did you?
Yeah, I got my first comment card. It said, and your employee Anthony did a really good job. As the other guests are trying to take pictures with me, and this guest just thought I was filming. It was fantastic. But what I'm saying is, this is and the closer I get to the line employees, the more I realize how much I miss it. So it's getting that excitement back and teaching people how great this is.
Bob?
Hospitality management is a vocation. It's not a job.
Yeah.
You have to appreciate the way of life. And if you do, it'll satisfy you in ways other jobs won't. And I think that's something we have to promote.
Yeah. You said before we went on air that you've been teaching for 20 years.
20 years.
That's amazing. And what school are you teaching at?
Roosevelt University here in Chicago.
And you're focused on hospitality?
I teach in the graduate hospitality program for 20
years
now.
Tell us a little bit about what those students are like. How have they changed in time? And are they still as enthusiastic?
They are, but it's interesting. I think most teachers would tell you the evolution of teaching in the last 20 years has been incredible because of the shifts in societies. The things that the students want to talk about today are very different than the things that they wanted to talk about when I started doing this, 1 day a week 20 years ago. And the course that I have generally taught is organizational development and multicultural diversity. And they have been hot topics in society. And so we've had to keep the conversation vigorous and contemporary. So we're dealing with the issues that they're seeing on the TV at night in the context of hospitality, and how are we going to be a Big Ten industry, and how do we draw new generation of workers, and how do we make sure that our workplaces are diverse and places where people feel comfortable? And those are the issues that the students want to talk about today rather than 20 years ago,
Right.
when they weren't as top of mind as they are now.
What were they focused on 20 years ago? Was it just a matter of this is what you have to do in order to be successful at a particular role in a job?
Yeah, 20 years ago, we were focused much more on the dynamics of an organization and the puzzle, if you will, the performance puzzle, hiring the right people, and all that's still very important. But the students take the class now in different directions, because they want to talk about not just how do you hire the right people, but tell me about who the people are that you hire and how you're able to, in this industry, which is very diverse. It's one of the great things about this business.
Yeah, and what I'm finding is, and I talk about this in my speeches and stuff, and in my talks, is the word I hate more than any word. One of the words I hate most is culture, because I think culture has become something that's derived by a group of guys that look like us, or in an executive boardroom. And they're like, okay, this is the culture we want, and now go get it. Whereas we need a culture in every organization. So, but I think it's so stigmatized that this is the culture. So you have to meet the culture. And what I'm trying to show people, and I'm sure, Bob, you see it every day in what you do, is I have my own culture of what I'm going to bring, whether it be my background, whether it be how I show up, and I'm going to surf within your culture. So stop telling me I have to meet your culture. And if I can surf within your culture and you can surf within mine, that's how we become. I treat everybody the same as far as respect, but the way I talk to people sometimes is different. Sometimes people are very, very conservative and very quiet, and I have to back up. And some people talk like me and just want the bottom line and talking half sentences. Right. And so what I find is that once you use this word culture, everybody tries to meet that culture, as opposed to us understanding we have to bring the cultures together. And I think you see that in the last couple of years, where when we were growing up in this industry, here's a chair, sit there and do your job. Whereas now they're like, no, I don't like that chair. I don't want to sit there. And I need to talk to you because I don't like my schedule. And whereas before we were like, excuse me, now it's like, okay, no problem.
Right.
And that's okay. It's got to be okay to be able to have somebody that has a little bit more freedom and a little bit more of an opinion. We didn't have an opinion. If we had an opinion, they give it to us.
I totally agree. That's a foundational value of Maverick, right? Is you be you and I'll be me, and we'll find a way for you being you and I being me to work together and make magic. And I completely agree with you. The cultural brainwashing that companies do sometimes to make everyone act in a certain way is difficult to sustain, because generationally people are moving more and more into an individual way of thinking. And I think the pandemic accelerated that. Pandemic did a lot of things, but one of the things it did was accelerate the generational shift.
Right. And it's been hard for me to actually it hasn't been hard for me, but I have had to be very mindful that we have to work together, and it doesn't matter the age, and it doesn't matter background. It matters, okay, that's important to you. Whereas when I was growing up in this industry, that was important to me, but I wasn't allowed to say it. I still remember my CFO of a major hotel in New York City telling me they were going to stick a pole from the window in places that, we can't talk about if I made that mistake again. And I didn't make the mistake. He told me to do it, but he forgot. And if somebody spoke to somebody like that today, I'd be, on every cable news network being arrested. And back in the day, I didn't even give any thought to it. I was just like, oh, all right, I'm just going to stay out of his office because he's an idiot. And but today, I couldn't imagine someone saying that.
Yeah, anyone with children gets that. I mean, being a manager in the workplace is no different than being a parent today. And it's a great thing. People are smart. They have a keen sense of self and worth, and we have to respect that. And people are not going to come to work to be treated like they're subjects of the crown. You won't get away with it in today's workplace. Yeah,
one of my daughters says "Dad," and when she says "Dad," that means you're going to listen to everything I say and you're going to do what I want you to do. So I okay, what am I doing right now? So tonight, when she said this morning, "Dad," she's a meeting planner. Apparently, she's working the the Rock, the new movie that Rock's doing. There's a premiere in the city. Apparently, she's working the will call, and apparently, I'm picking her up at 9:00 tonight because that's what she told me I'm doing.
Oh. Well, you take orders very good, so that's glad to hear. So, Bob, when you started in 2018, you got to be able to create that culture from the beginning. What is it like setting your sights on creating a culture and then bringing that to life through the people every day?
The name Maverick is it was suggested to me by a friend who said, I've known you 20 years and this is your personality.
Yep.
And the first thing that I tried to do is say, if the culture of Maverick is going to be genuine, it has to be a true reflection of me, right? I have to be the chief cheerleader. I have to walk the walk and talk the talk, and everything will follow. And it's funny that really that self-awareness has been so critical to our, if you can call it culture, right, to who we are, because we just had a meeting up in Nantucket 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
And we had all our GMs in the room, and that was a big topic. People talked about it's just really cool to come and be who you are, to feel like you're part of something bigger, but yet by the same token to be respected as a professional and an individual, and the Maverick way of life, if you will, which is we challenge everything. Nothing is accepted at face value. We ask questions about everything.
Right. And that's how you solve problems. I always say in this industry, it's not fixing problem, it's solving them before they happen. And I think that's where the brands got caught up 20, 30 years ago, was they were reacting to the guest problems as opposed to solving the problems. And before they happened. And
I think that's a general problem in society. We don't tend to look at root causes. We tend to try to fix symptoms of those causes instead of going back and figuring it out.
Yeah, I try to fix your root problems, but I just have to keep solving reacting to your problems because you don't listen.
No, never. Ken, hey, Chance, just wanted to say I had the pleasure of spending some time with Bob at BuyTech in Key Largo. You're a true gentleman, Bob, generous with your insights and help make the event incredibly useful for me and others from the supplier community. Thank you. That's pretty cool.
Can I ask you? Go ahead, Glenn. Do you have a question? Because I was
just going to say, I used to do all the speaking at the BuyTech events back in the day before I started this business. So I definitely have a connection to there. Say hello to the Violas next time you're at an event from me. Anthony, go ahead.
I think you have the Guinness Book of World Records for attending more events than any human beings ever lived.
I don't know about that, but maybe in the hospitality business. I don't know, but who else has a record? Guinness Book of World Records for the world's largest outdoor bar, which is over here.
Before we jump to that, I want to ask you a question because we want everyone to come as they are, and we want everybody to be transparent. But it comes a point where there'd be usually a general manager or someone, maybe a regional, where they're full of crap and they're not being authentic and they're not being true to your brand. How do you handle that? Now, I know there's all right, you have to talk to them and then you have to run them in your office and that whole night. But what do you, personally, how do you handle that?
The best thing that you can do for that person is help them transition to a role where they're going to feel more comfortable.
Like outside the company?
Like outside the company, yeah.
That's a great answer.
If you're going to be true to your school, people who don't maintain your values, and it's all about values, right? If we share a common set of values, everything else falls into place. And if someone doesn't share your values, that's okay. We don't think we are the only answer, but we'll invite that person to find a place where their values are more aligned.
Yeah, and mine is promote the customer.
That's right. I like
that. But yeah, I should promote the customer. But the thing I think what you just said, and you said it so succinctly, is more important than almost anything you do on a daily basis, because that cancer will destroy the entire brand. And if you can't get there quickly and understand you got to pull that out immediately, if it's based on lying and based on not, holding up to your standards of integrity. There's one thing of that, keeping the hotels clean as you want, or the profitability, but there's another thing about lying of why it's not happening. And when that happens, it's really refreshing to hear someone like you say that, because a lot of people, especially in the brands and corporate, give you all kinds of BS answers, but at the end of the day, you got to promote the customer, or you're going to kill your brand, you're going to kill your culture.
Yeah, Jack Welch said that the most divisive thing in any company are people that can perform the function but don't share the values, because you'll look the other way and accept their job performance, but they slowly but surely diminish the overall company.
Right. That's one of those things that you probably don't notice immediately, and it could just infect your organization if you're not careful, because it's insidious in that way, right?
Right. It's somebody that can turn good numbers but treats their employees like dogs.
Yeah.
And you look the other way because the numbers are coming in, and it's not long before you've got real problems on your hand. And it's a hard thing. We're all addicted to performance, right? We're all stuck reporting on performance, but you need to be courageous enough to say you might be really good at turning numbers, but you don't represent our values when it comes to people.
Right. And managing people is the hardest thing to do on earth. I don't care if you're a brain surgeon. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're an astrophysicist. Managing a team is the either you learn it and you understand it, or you don't.
Right.
And if you can't manage a team, I don't care how smart you are. And that's why you've been successful, right, Bob? I mean, if you couldn't manage a team and you couldn't make them feel comfortable when you went to that retreat a couple of weeks ago and they didn't feel valued, I don't care how smart you are. I don't care what your IQ is. It doesn't matter.
Agreed. Well, two of the words we talked about at our meeting were ruthless and accountability. Ruthless accountability. We have to hold each other ruthlessly accountable.
Right.
It's not all cream cheese and apple pie. It's, there's a tangible product that we have to produce, right? Which is great stays for guests and profits for owners. And we have to hold ourselves ruthlessly accountable for that while still respecting individuals and treating people well and making them, it's a proven fact that people do. If you look at all the Gallup research that was done, you make people feel good about where they work and what they're doing, and they will go so far over the top.
Right.
Ruthlessly accountable, because guests and owners are ruthlessly accountable. They will, like, if there's literally, we just opened the hotel and there were, we didn't put the blow dryers in the rooms. And the guest was like, how's there no blow dryer? And he had a blow dryer in 3 seconds. But the point is they're going to hold you ruthlessly accountable for standards. And so if you're not holding each other, and, one of the things I always got in trouble for was like, who did that? And my staff would say, it doesn't matter. I was like, no, it matters. Critically important. It matters, because if I know who did it, then I know why they did it, and we can ask them. And it's typically because you didn't train them,
right,
or they ran out of a product that you were supposed to handle. So I don't care who did it, outside of just tracing it back to solving it so it doesn't happen again. So I think who made the mistake is critically important to solving the issue, because the answer the manager gives me is never the answer of why they made the mistake at the line level, in my opinion.
Right. Agree. It's not about me. It's about us. And with the team that wins, there's a great example. If you watch the series on the Chicago Bulls, since we're in Chicago, and the repeat the three-peat, in that final game of, I think it was season 6, where Jordan was injured and Pippen was gonna take the lead, and they were building the game around him, and Jordan showed up and said, I think I can play. I'm gonna go out. And Pippen's response was, I got your back. Let's go. And
right,
so that keen awareness that this isn't about me being a star tonight, it's about us winning,
right,
is worth a lot.
Yeah. I can care less about that as opposed to being number one in the market, or the comp set, or that housekeeper, winning, and that housekeeper getting promoted and becoming, I want to see a housekeeper go from being a housekeeper to being a general manager for a 4-star hotel in my career before I die. I have not seen that yet. And
I know, that's very true.
And I don't know why.
Yeah, but while you're mentioning that, I should say that this is last week, everybody, to go ahead and put in something for the Cintas Shine Awards. So you can go and check that out. Nominate a housekeeper, because they are so important. Hold on, here we go. Visit CintasShineAwards.com. Nominate a housekeeper today. So, Bob, I'm curious as to what's going on out there in the investment community. We were over at the Lodging Conference a couple of weeks ago. People were sort of talking about that. We haven't really covered it that much on this particular program. Overall, what is the appetite of development out there for the hospitality industry versus what's really realistically likely with rising interest rates and a tightening of cash?
Yeah, it's a conundrum.
Yeah.
If we could all get all of our stars lined up at the same time, it would be so much easier. But for 10 years, we've been predicting that product would come to market discounted because of what's going on with the, and it never happened. Now it's starting to happen. We're at that point where there is product coming to market. The development, anybody who's doing development will tell you development is really hot right now, in spite of the rising costs and rates. Although I don't know how long that's going to sustain itself, because we're in an environment where you can't get debt. The uncertainty in the macro economy, the uncertainty even about where rates end up. The Fed has continued to signal that they believe that we might be headed into a recession. It won't be a soft landing, and that they intend to keep pressing rates.
I think they said they intend to take it all the way up to like 4.8 or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be chilling. And so it sucks, because now you can finally get development deals going again. Some of the materials costs are starting to come down, and there are transactions taking place with hotels, but with existing hotels, but getting debt is going to be a challenge in the near future.
That's interesting. So how does that change the aspect of how all of these deals take place? Does that mean new development is going to come to a halt? Is it going to be sales of existing properties that slow down? What does it realistically look like to you?
Cyclically, typically what happens is you find there's a lot of transitions and rebranding and existing products, existing hotels to trade hands, and then the ground up development slows. And I think you can expect that this cycle. It's very difficult to get a new development financed in today's environment because of the uncertainty, and especially in the urban centers. I mean, Chicago, the New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, name a city. And people are losing faith in what's happening in those downtown areas. It will all come right. We're not going to dry up and blow away, but for the moment, people are taking a wait and see attitude.
But then you get companies like on the other end of it, like MCR, which has been buying up a gajillion properties in those markets.
Now's the time to be buy low, sell high.
Right.
It's interesting, because for 2 years, everybody's like, the money on the sideline wants to go to work, wants to go to work, wants to go to work. And now what I think I'm hearing is the money on the sideline is like, oh, let me park it here for a while, because we don't know what the hell's going to happen. Is that a true assessment of what you just said?
I think there's still plenty of money on the sideline that wants to go to work. It's the other side of the equation, which is equity is much easier to raise than debt right now. And so the people that have the ability to do deals where they're injecting a lot of equity, if not balance sheet buys, are making transactions. And the people that need a more traditional, debt to equity ratio are struggling a little bit to find lenders that are willing to do it right now.
Right. What was right before the pandemic? What was the debt to equity ratio? If I had $1, how much of that could have been debt? How much could be equity?
At its peak in any cycle, you can get to where we're into 80 to 90% leverage. Those days are long
gone. That was back before the Great Recession.
2007, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so cyclically, we've settled out at 70-30 is a typical.
Right. And you think that's why the pandemic didn't take all these hotels that everybody said was going to take, and me and Glenn predicted day one that they wouldn't go anywhere, because it was in 2007 that it was 70-30 and things were a little bit more solid for these investors, and they had money put away. And I don't think I didn't see it going the way a lot of people thought it was going to go. I think it was 2007 and we hit the pandemic. It'd have been a catastrophe.
Agreed.
Yeah. And the three biggest letters in the industry in 2020 weren't ADR, they were PPP.
Right.
And I think that's what kept a lot of people alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure did. So I do think it's interesting. One of the lessons for some of you younger folks out there to take away from this is that yin yang that we see when new development kind of slows down. A lot of the conversions and sales of those kind of take off. So if you're folks within the vendor and supplier communities out there, at least you know that if you start to switch kind of like your tactics, you'll still be able to remain whole going forward. Are you seeing a lot of owners and operators out there, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to build new, maybe I'll buy a property and follow the PIP and create a new brand, or put a new brand on it?
I think there's a lot of that going on, and there'll be more, because you do have finally product coming to market at a discount. And even through the economic cycle starting in 08-09, we didn't see the discounting that was expected. It just didn't occur. You're now starting to see some really good assets especially if they were financed through the CMBS. They're coming to market at a reasonable discount, not a fire sale,
Right.
but a reasonable discount that would inspire you to want to buy it.
But so basically, the next 2 or 3 year potential recession is built into the price, is what you're saying.
I think there is an anticipation that we're headed into recession, and the pricing is starting to reflect that. And we've seen it if you go back way back, to the savings and loan days and so on.
And that would be like early 1990s is what you're talking about,
right,
there.
the early 1990s. That was deep discounting, fire sales.
Right.
We haven't seen that since.
What is different about the fundamentals then than to how stuff works now that won't happen again?
Crazy leverage.
Right.
There seemed to be no one watching the store. People were borrowing more money than a hotel was worth against it. And
as soon as you said that, as soon as he asked the question, I started laughing because it's exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was still in college in 1990.
No, but I wasn't laughing at the question. I was laughing at how ridiculous it was. I'll give you an example. I was involved in a project. It was only 2006, 2007.
Right.
But the owner of the hotel got let's just say, a $90 million loan, and he put $3 million into the hotel.
Oh,
the hotel now is worth $250 million. As soon as 2008 hit and everything started falling apart, somehow he saved it. I don't know how he did it. He saved it, and it's a very lucrative, functioning hotel right now. And today it doesn't exist. I don't think it'll ever exist again. But he literally got in like I'm going to say $3 million because I thought there was $1 million, but I don't want to be that ridiculous. But I think it was $1 million. He literally put $1 million to get a $100 million hotel, and that was in 2006, 2007. So it was ridiculous. It was funny money, and I don't know how they did it. I have no idea how he did it, but he did it.
Yeah, lenders today are on the opposite side of it. I've got a transaction I'm trying to get closed right now, and I was up at 7:00 this morning sending pictures of my grandmother and what I ate for dinner last night. Lenders are scrutinizing borrowers to a much greater degree.
Yep.
And there is much looking for pedigree as financial capability. And I mean pedigree in that, do you know what you're doing in the industry? Proof to me.
That used to be enough. And it used to be enough with some money, but now that's like the price. It's like a college degree, right? It's like, oh, okay, you have a college degree. That's good. So I'm going to let you maybe take the job because you have a degree. But if you didn't have a degree, maybe I would. I don't know. But degree doesn't matter. It's just it's like a high school diploma was 25 years ago. Yes. So like the experience is like a high school diploma was 25 years ago. It's just we expect you to have it.
What's it like trying to convince these bankers to give you money that don't understand the hospitality business?
Well, not all bankers don't understand
right.
the hospitality.
No, but the ones
are definitely some that are very
97.6% of them, though.
Right, but I mean, like Access Financial, for example, is very focused on hospitality, so they get it. But yeah.
And honestly, a lot of the lenders that don't understand hospitality are out of the game right now. It's just too scary a world for them to live in. These bankers are like Amish, right? They clip-clop down the road in a cart, and the industry right now is like Cirque du Soleil. And so it's very difficult for lenders to get their arms around what's going on in hospitality.
Right.
They just know what they hear is that with the pandemic and with what's going on with travel and so on, that there's a lot of risk there. Stay away.
Yeah, I remember in doing the show, Hotel Impossible, several times I talked to bankers, and I'm like, and I said on the show, like, why would you lend these people money for the hotel? Well, the hotel business is this, that, and the other. That. I said, but what is the star report? What star report were you looking at when you lent the money to these people? And they're like, what's a star report? Yeah. I was like, a banker is lending money and they don't know what a star report is? It was fascinating. But yeah.
Also, if they're not in the business, why would, they're stuck in that world if they don't know what they don't know. So if they're not curious and do the research, they're never going to figure that stuff out.
It's kind of like, I don't know how to fix an engine of a car.
Right.
But I know it needs gas, and I know it needs pistons, and I know it needs tires and the steering wheel. So I'm going to make sure it has that before I, drive the car. So, and a banker, that's their job. Their job, if you're going to lend money to, a young lady that has a lemonade stand, or you're going to lend money to somebody that's opening a restaurant or a bar or a comedy store, you have to know their business before you lend the money. That's just your job.
Yep. Yeah. Bob, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, in a way, that's a great analogy, because what you find is that it's a little bit easier to get the I'll say simple transactions, to your car analogy. A small Hampton Inn in a market somewhere, people know it's a brand you can trust, and generally speaking, you can get that deal done. When you take your car analogy, when you start to look at a Maserati or some car that people know is more complex and more vulnerable and has more chance for there to be a problem, that's when you really see people start to scrutinize the potential deal.
But even a Hampton Inn in a great market, the lender is going to look at the star report. They're going to look 100%. At the financials.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just amazing sometimes what happens in the markets through, I've been here since 1986.
Right.
And, you see it all. How in God's name can a hotel in Times Square in 2019, two of them, be bankrupt in 2019?
Yeah.
It's because in 2008, when things got better, and there was I will leave words out, but there was a contract signed that was not beneficial to one side of the parties. And now in 2019, it came to fruition.
Right.
And even in 2019, that decision in 2008 destroyed those kind of hotels in 2019. And I think Bob knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You do, because they were a lot of these hotels that had these situations. We were at the top of the market at that particular point, yet they were still having a hard time surviving. So it didn't have to be the COVID crisis that happened. It could have been almost anything. It would have knocked somebody.
I was in the executive committee on that in that decision a year before, and when I found out what happened, I was like, "What happened?"
Yeah,
it's like, because if we were in a boardroom, I couldn't imagine the people that I was in the boardroom with would have ever done that. But whatever.
Yeah. So, you want to come?
No, I was going to say you can't underwrite to the top of the market. Economies are cyclical, markets are cyclical. There are dynamics at play, and you've got to allow yourself the flexibility to survive when the market starts to wane or some other thing happens. And if you underwrite at the top of the market, you're going to get stuck.
Yep.
We had a 12-year run in this economy, and people were blown away by, the fact that the upmarket had lasted so long, but eventually something, call it COVID, happens.
There was only 1 month in that 12-year period that didn't perform higher than the previous month. I think that's correct, right?
Yeah, we had something like 120 something months in a row, and then it was 1 month that was a little off, and then it continued on. It was absolutely unbelievable.
And I would just laugh because people were like, "Oh my God!" It's like, dude, like this is going to come to an end. It's like we did 9 seasons of my show, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, this is going to last." I was like, "No, it's going to end." The one day that call that we're used to getting every season, it's like, "Hey, we're starting in September, October." We're not going to get it, and that's got to be okay because we got 9 seasons. Like you got to be okay. And I think that it just blows me away. That's why when people don't appreciate what they have in life, it's like, this is all going to go away one day. And it's just like, there's just this mindset that no. And then when it does go away, somehow they did something wrong. Life isn't fair, and it's just, you got to prepare that things are always going to go, 120 months of performance, high performance.
Right. Well, people don't. And while we understand the cyclical nature of everything within the universe, simultaneously, as human beings, we seem to be stuck in thinking whatever the situation is right now, it will always be. So as you got these two things that are fighting against each other, and I think it causes some irrational decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap up, I want to talk to you a little bit more about food, but I want to talk to you from the customer side. What are the trends that you're seeing right now compared to 2019, for example? Are people still now wanting to get out and, I had a bunch of small plates, for example, last night. Are we back to doing that at this point? And what trends have you seen maybe accelerated over the last couple of years?
That's a very interesting question because that was an easy question to answer in 2019, right? We were headed towards fresh and natural and organic and those things, and all that's still true.
Yep.
The post-pandemic consumer is very different, though. People are in the restaurant world, if you will, people have a different set of wants and needs, and they're finicky.
Yeah.
We have, I think, we might be setting ourselves up for our next difficulty, which is with what's going on in the marketplace, not just the pandemic, but labor. People who travel know that they're going to get on an airplane that's going to be packed. They're going to have trouble finding an Uber, they're going to get to a restaurant and stand in line, and they're going to wait for service. And either we'll all get used to that, or it's going to have a negative effect.
Right.
We solved the problem. We solved the problem last week, me and Glenn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to give you our idea, and you can run with it. Bring back the automat.
Yep.
A high-end automat.
I think that technology, if you will, is going to be part of the answer. It has to be. Just has to be.
Yeah.
When I was where was I? I was somewhere. I don't remember. Somewhere in Europe or Asia. And I remember sitting in the airport, and all of a sudden there was this conveyor belt of food. That kind of like the automat was more where it was kind of in these stations. You put your money in, you would take the food. This is, and I think we've all seen this in Europe or Asia.
Like the sushi places?
What's that?
Like the sushi places on the conveyor belts that go by?
Yeah, but this wasn't sushi. This was like regular food, and it was going past me. And I was like, "Oh, I'll have that." Like we can't have that because that person has it, but we'll get you another one. And we just go and you just grab it. I was like, "Oh my god, I love this!"
Yeah, so, it's great. It's like blue plates are $5, red plates are $6, whatever it is, and they just
and more important, like the little hotel we just opened in Jupiter. There's QR code, and the QR code, you hit it, you pay because we don't have interface. You pay the restaurant, and the restaurant's in the back of the building, like 100 yards away. We don't own it, but the owner doesn't own it, but he owns the property. So they're working with us. You do the QR code, and the room service happens. It happens in a bag. It comes to the front desk. It's only 2 floors. You come and you get you get the food. And I think even at the higher end hotels, you're gonna. I remember JW Marriott in Washington when I was there doing a speech, and I ordered room service, and it came in a bag, and I was like, oh my god, that was like 5 years ago. And I was like, oh my God. So I just, not only we're going to get used to it, we want it. We want people to stay away from us until we want to interact with them. Like what happened with taxis. You have to tip the bellman, which I'm a big proponent of. You have to have them open the door for you. You'd have to have them tell where you're going. How about we just call an Uber? I can make believe you don't exist as a bellman and get into the Uber. That's what people want. I always try to tell people, please use a taxi cab in New York City and please tip your bellman because that's what they live on. But typically we love an Uber because you don't have to deal with anybody.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Bob.
No, I think you're 100% correct, and that's where we're starting to creep as an industry. We're actually a late adapter of that kind of technology. Other industries went there a long time ago. Mm-hmm. As travelers, we all know you go to the airport, you go to a kiosk, you
for decades now,
right?
Yeah.
But hotels, people always love interacting with our teams. Yeah. So we found consumers resistant of that, but I think over time people just get used to it's the new norm, right? It's
sorry, go on, Anthony.
No, go ahead. I
was going to say I think, and we've talked about it here on the show before. It's eliminating the touch points that are unnecessary. You still need people to be a great representative and make an emotional connection with your guests in the hotel. But I don't necessarily have to have that interaction with someone as I'm going out to the car, right? And I don't need to worry about whatever's going on back of house. If you could use technology to eliminate some of that, then it's a win-win.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anthony?
Once I get my key on my phone and I check into my room, if I want to know where to go for dinner, I'll give you an example. We just had a guest that checked in the hotel. You can tell they didn't want any part of us. Then they came down and they're like, we're going to the seafood restaurant. And the young lady who lives in Jupiter said, no, go to this seafood restaurant. They came back the next that night and they were like out of their minds. Like, that's the best seafood restaurant we've ever been to. Thanks for the recommendation. That's where it's important. It's not so much important to hand me a key. Especially if I'm a road warrior, just give me my key, leave me alone. I know what I want, but when I do want you, you better give me a good answer. And that's where I'll come back to the hotel.
Right. That's a better answer than a lot of answers I get when I ask people at the front desk. They're like, I don't know. I don't live around here. You know,
so my favorite is when you have a really nice restaurant and they don't tell you our restaurant is great. they send you down the street.
But more and more consumers don't ask the question. They go to their phone. They pull up one of these third-party referrals and they look for a peer-to-peer review. And they follow the customers to them, which is
and the one thing I've learned about peer-to-peer reviews over time is you can't necessarily trust them because I'm spoiled and I have a lot of experience eating, and I look at a meal and the quality of a meal in a very different way than someone else might look at it. So they're approaching their review from a totally different place than I would even consider.
100% correct.
Yeah, that's why I like the smart concierge.
If you're following a 23-year-old that's never gone to culinary school, and has not traveled the world, and you've seen them in 12 restaurants in the last month saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing." Why do you think they're doing that? They're doing that for likes, and they're doing that because they're probably getting a sponsorship deal with the restaurant to do that because they were smart enough to get 200,000 people following them, and now they can sell out of the restaurant. But they're going around and they don't really have, like, everything you go into can't be amazing. Like every spoonful, there's this one woman, every time she puts something, it could be anything, the best thing I ever had. It's like you lose credibility.
Right. That being said, the empanadas I had last night were really fantastic.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Be sure to post it.
Yes.
Every restaurateur is now being besieged by all of these social influencers that want to come by for a free meal.
Yeah, I've got 10 followers.
Right. And we set a minimum. I mean, if you want, we're glad to invite you in and have you experience our restaurant. If you've got at least 100,000 followers, that's like the cutoff, because that's the when you're really in it, in it to win it, as opposed to someone who's just found a very clever way to, experience restaurants.
Oh, so I'm going to get a free meal because I have over 100,000 followers on my platform.
But make sure you tip your
100%.
service. Yep. You still got to tip and tip generously.
No, it's so funny. It's like Glenn was there. Like, I've had a lot of cheeseburgers in my life. I had a cheeseburger last night. I'm a cheeseburger guy. And Glenn saw when I really had the best cheeseburger of my life. He saw me run around the table,
Hotel Zena,
screaming, running into the kitchen, looking for the chef, saying, "My head blew off."
Yeah.
So those things don't happen very often, but when they do, it's an emotional reaction.
Right.
Yeah, it certainly is, and that's when you make great connection with your customers there. We're just about out of time. What's next for you guys? What are you thinking about going forward?
Our development pipeline is overfull.
Wow.
We are blessed right now, and I think a lot of companies are in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
We are running around. During the pandemic, all of us tried to live lean,
right?
And so we're trying to do a lot with a smaller team, and the opportunity is, I think we're benefiting from getting a good reputation right out of the gates. But we are very, very busy. We have 2 hotels under construction, 2 in planning, and probably 6 more behind that.
Wow.
That we're working through the pipeline.
Anthony?
Here's a question, Bob. Have you ever heard, like, we hear regional vice president of this and that and the other thing. Have you ever heard of a regional vice president of housekeeping in a management company? Or have you?
Such a smart idea. We had a corporate director of housekeeping. But
I think nowadays, if I had a management company, my regional vice president would be a regional vice president of housekeeping, because that will alleviate 90% of the problems of my regional vice presidents.
Yeah, I think every general manager should be required to do what I saw you do on your show, which is work a shift as a housekeeper. You go out and actually do it. And I'll tell you what, you become a different person after that, and appreciate that job is so central to our product, and it is difficult. You
become humbled. I checked. I didn't clean a room, but I checked the room this week, and then all of a sudden, a young lady who's managing the hotel, she's 22 years old, no experience. She's amazing. She's a rock star. One of my favorite people I've ever worked with. She's incredible. She comes in and she goes to the front desk because she checked behind me because she's a smart girl, smart lady. And there was 3 little washes that, like screws. And she went like this in my face, like, it's so hard to inspect a room. The way she did it was like, Mr. Hotel.
Yeah.
So to me, in order for me to rest at night, I'd have to have somebody just focused 100% on helping my regionals with housekeeping, and because that's the problem that everyone is having. I don't care how big or small you are. It is traumatic.
Very much.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. Now, before we go, everybody, I want to make sure that if you're watching us, why not listen to us on podcasts, right? Where we are, wherever you want to be, wherever you get your show. Do it. As a matter of fact, I just got a note from Amazon saying that they're doing podcasts right now. So you could find No Vacancy Live on Amazon too, as well as Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, SoundCloud, you know all the deals. Plus, if you are listening to us right now, thanks so much. Why not watch us? Watch us on LinkedIn. Watch us on Facebook. Watch us on YouTube. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn.
I just learned something. I didn't know Amazon didn't have podcasts.
Yeah. Well, I guess we did learn something. I don't know. I just got an email from him saying, hey, sign up for it. And then I went to sign up for it. And apparently we already were. So good for us.
Oh, good for us. We're amazing.
All right, everybody. We'll be back next week, because Anthony and I are going to be doing a big speaking gig here at the Hospitality Asset Managers Association meeting. That should be a lot of fun. Got a great lineup of shows coming. And until then, remember, you've got one life, so blaze on and
Be kind to yourself.
see you all next time.